Part 1. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was silent. Hana Kim stood at the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of 12 alien species watching her every move. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with Earth symbol on her shoulder. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. This was it. The moment humanity had been waiting for since they discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. The moment they would ask to join the Galactic Council. The council members sat in a circle around her. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal. A few looked almost human, but with wrong proportions that made her skin crawl. At the highest seat sat the council leader, a being of pure energy contained in a floating sphere. Ambassador Hana Kim of Earth. The leader's voice echoed in her mind rather than her ears. You have requested membership in our council. What does humanity offer to the galactic community? Hana had practiced this speech 1,000 times. We offer our creativity, our determination, and our desire for peace. Humanity has learned hard lessons from our past. We have fought terrible wars among ourselves, but we have also learned to work together, to build instead of destroy. We want to join you as friends and partners. Several council members nodded or made gestures of approval, but one figure stood up suddenly. It was Elder Rathkar, a Veltraxian who looked like a tall, thin lizard with wise, ancient eyes. He had been alive for over 300 years and had studied more species than most beings would ever meet. I must speak, Rathkar said, his voice deep and serious. I have spent the last 20 years studying humanity. I have watched their television broadcasts. I have read their history books. I have analyzed their military strategies. And I must warn this council. Humanity is unlike any species we have encountered before. Hana felt her stomach drop. This was not going according to plan. Rathkar continued. Humans are dangerous, not because they are evil, but because they do not think like we do. They come from a death world, a planet that has tried to kill them for millions of years. They evolved as prey animals who learned to fight back. They have survived ice ages, plagues, and countless natural disasters. And when they had conquered their planet, they turned on each other. He brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars, and nuclear explosions filled the air. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Look at what they have done to themselves, Rathkar said. In just the last century, they have invented weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They have created poisons that could kill billions. They have split the atom and turned it into bombs, and yet they survived. They controlled themselves. They pulled back from the edge of extinction again and again. A loud laugh interrupted him. High Overlord Krem of the Dracorian Empire stood up. He was massive, covered in dark scales, with red eyes that glowed with contempt. The Dracorians were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. This is ridiculous, Krem said, his voice filled with mockery. You expect us to fear these tiny creatures? They have barely left their own star system. They have one small planet with less than 20 billion people. My empire controls 500 worlds. Our fleets could swallow their entire space in a day. Other council members murmured in agreement. Krem walked closer to the holographic display, pointing at the images of human weapons. Yes, they fight among themselves. So does every species before they reach the stars. They have primitive nuclear weapons. We have antimatter bombs. They have chemical poisons. We have biological weapons that could sterilize planets. There is nothing special about them. Rathkar's eyes narrowed. You are not listening. It is not about their weapons. It is about their minds. Humans have a concept they call spite. They will hurt themselves if it means hurting their enemy worse. They have another concept called stubbornness. They will refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain. And they have creativity that borders on insanity. They look at everything and ask, how can I use this as a weapon? Then they are fools, Krem said simply. Any species that refuses logical surrender deserves to be conquered. Hana wanted to defend humanity, but she knew staying silent was smarter. Let the council debate. Let them think humans were weak. She had learned in her diplomatic training that being underestimated was sometimes an advantage. The council leader raised a hand for silence. Elder Rathkar, we appreciate your research. However, the council has rules. All species who achieve faster-than-light travel and request membership must be given a chance. We cannot deny them based on fear of what they might do. The vote was called. One by one, the council members cast their decisions. In the end, Humanity was accepted with provisional membership. They would have basic protections under council law, but limited voting rights until they proved themselves. Hana bowed respectfully and thanked the council. As the session ended and the chamber began to empty, she felt a presence beside her. It was Elder Rathkar. "Ambassador Kim," he said quietly. "May I speak with you privately?" They walked to an observation deck overlooking the stars. Rathkar looked tired, older than his 300 years. "Why did you warn them?" Hana asked. "You made us sound like monsters." "Because I have studied your history," Rathkar said. "I have read your books, watched your films, analyzed your wars, and I am terrified, not of what you are, but of what you could become if pushed. Your species has survived by adapting, by fighting, by never giving up. Those are admirable traits, but they are also dangerous in the wrong circumstances." He turned to look at her directly. "I tried to warn them so that they would treat you with respect, with caution, so that they would never give you a reason to show your full potential. But they did not listen. They see your small fleet and your few colonies and they think you are weak." "We are weak," Hana said honestly. "Compared to the council races, we are children playing with toys." "No," Rathkar said firmly. "You are inexperienced. That is not the same as weak. A child with a knife is still dangerous. And humanity is not a child. You are a species that has been training for war since you learned to walk upright." He sighed deeply. "I have seen what your species is capable of. Your Second World War alone killed more people than most galactic conflicts in history, and that was with primitive technology. I have read about your psychological warfare, your guerrilla tactics, your willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. I pray to the old gods that the galaxy never has to witness what humanity can do when truly threatened." Hana felt a chill run down her spine. "You think war is coming?" "I think Krem is arrogant," Rathkar said, "and arrogance leads to mistakes. The Dracorian Empire has been expanding aggressively for decades. The Council restrains them, but barely. If they see humanity as weak, they may test you. And if they do?" He trailed off, shaking his head. "What should we do?" Hana asked. "Prepare," Rathkar said simply. "Hope for peace, but prepare for war. And if war comes, remember that the Council will be slow to act. You will be alone at first. Make every moment count." As Hana returned to her ship, she thought about Rathkar's words. She had spent years learning to be a diplomat, to solve problems with words instead of weapons. But she was also human, and every human knew their history. They knew what their species was capable of when pushed into a corner. She sent an encrypted message back to Earth, to the Defense Council. Just 3 words. Increase military production. Far across the galaxy, High Overlord Krem stood in his war room, looking at maps of human territory. His advisors were suggesting caution, but he dismissed them with a wave of his clawed hand. "These humans think they can join the Council as equals," he said with contempt. "Let us teach them their place. Choose a target, something small, a colony world. We will show them what real power looks like." The pieces were moving into place. The warnings had been ignored. And across the galaxy, on ships and stations and planetary bases, humans began to prepare for what they all hoped would never come. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. For most humans, life continued as normal. They built new colonies, explored nearby star systems, and tried to learn about their new alien neighbors. But for Colonel Yuna Lee, commander of the Defense Forces on New Horizon Colony, life had become increasingly tense. New Horizon was humanity's newest colony, built on a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green forests. 10,000 colonists had made it their home. It was peaceful, quiet, and very far from Earth. That made it vulnerable. Yuna stood in her command center watching the sensor displays. For the past 2 weeks, Dracorian ships had been appearing at the edge of the system. They would jump in, scan everything, and jump out. They were testing defenses, gathering intelligence, and making a point. "We can go wherever we want." "Another contact," her second-in-command reported. "Same as before. 3 destroyers. They are just sitting there watching us." Yuna nodded. She had expected this. The Dracorians were not subtle. They wanted humanity to feel pressure, to feel afraid. Log it and send the report to Earth. "How are our preparations going?" "We have converted 2 mining rigs into mass drivers. The civilian ships are being fitted with the equipment you requested. And Engineer Nari has that crazy idea working with the construction drones." "Good," Yuna said. She had learned a long time ago that the best defense was creativity. The council races fought by the book, with standard tactics and predictable strategies. Humans did not have that luxury. They had to improvise. The warning came at 400 hours. Una was pulled from sleep by emergency alarms. She ran to the command center in her nightclothes, her heart pounding. 20 Dracorian warships just jumped in, her officer reported, his voice shaking. They are forming an attack formation. Ma'am, it is a full battle fleet. Una felt ice in her stomach, but she kept her voice calm. Sound general quarters. Get everyone to the shelters. Contact Earth and the Council immediately. And get me a communication line to that fleet. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Dracorian commander. He looked bored, as if this was a routine assignment. Attention, human colony. I am Commander Vrek of the Dracorian Empire. This system falls under our territorial claim based on ancient star maps. You have 1 hour to surrender and evacuate. Resistance will be met with force. Una stared at the screen. 1 hour. 20 warships against her small defense force. She should surrender. It was the logical choice. It was what any rational commander would do when faced with impossible odds. But Una had studied military history. She had read about Thermopylae, about the Alamo, about Stalingrad. She knew that sometimes holding the line mattered more than survival. This was humanity's first real test. How they responded would tell the galaxy who they were. She opened a channel to all of New Horizon. This is Colonel Lee. Everyone has heard the demand. I am not going to lie to you. We are outnumbered and outgunned. By every logical calculation, we should lose this fight. But I am not surrendering. This is our home. These people think they can take it just because they have bigger ships. I say we show them what humans do when someone tries to take our home. She paused, then added, anyone who wants to evacuate can go. No judgment, no shame. But I am staying, and I'm going to make these bastards work for every inch. Not a single person left their post. Una felt pride swell in her chest. Then she opened a channel to Commander Vrek. This is Colonel Una Lee of New Horizon Colony. I have your demand. Here is my response. Come and take it. She cut the transmission before he could respond. Her officers stared at her in shock. Then slowly they began to smile. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was perfectly human. On the Dracorian flagship, Commander Vrek laughed. Did you hear that? These primitives think they can fight us. This will be entertaining. Begin the assault. Take your time. Let us enjoy this. Far above New Horizon, on the UES Indomitable, Captain Minho Park was running through final checks. His ship was humanity's newest and most advanced warship. It had technology reverse-engineered from alien designs, improved with human creativity. But it was still just one ship. Status report, Minho ordered. Jump drive is ready. Weapons are charged. Dr. Jiho has loaded the special packages you requested. His tactical officer hesitated. Sir, those weapons are untested. Some of them are technically illegal under council law. The council is not here, Minho said flatly. We are. Calculate the fastest jump to New Horizon. And get me Dr. Jiho. Dr. Jiho Nam appeared on the screen looking excited and slightly nervous. He was young for a chief scientist, but brilliant. Captain, I have 3 surprises ready for you. First, the momentum bombs. Second, the drone swarms with the AI modifications. And third, something I call the Chaos Protocol. Explain the Chaos Protocol, Minho said. Jiho grinned. You know how the council races all use standardized communication frequencies? Well, I have created a program that hacks their systems and starts broadcasting random signals, distress calls, fake orders, even embarrassing personal messages. It will not hurt them, but it will confuse them badly. Minho felt himself smile. That was the kind of thinking that made humans dangerous. Not just weapons, but psychology. Not just force, but confusion. Load everything. We jump in 5 minutes. Back on New Horizon, the Dracorian assault had begun. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the colony's shields. The shields were flickering and failing. Una knew they only had minutes before the bombardment would reach the surface. Release the mining drones, she ordered. From hidden positions around the colony, hundreds of mining drones launched into space. They were not military hardware. They were tools designed to dig through asteroids, but engineer Nari had modified them. Each drone carried a small nuclear charge and had been programmed with one simple instruction. Ram the nearest enemy ship. The Dracorians were not expecting it. Their point defense systems were designed to stop missiles and fighters, not mining equipment. The drones were too small, too numerous, and too erratic. 3 of them got through and detonated against a destroyer's hull. The ship did not explode, but its shields collapsed and its weapons went offline. On the Dracorian flagship, Commander Wreck was no longer laughing. "What are they doing? Those are not weapons. Those are industrial tools." His tactical officer looked confused. "Sir, they are using everything as weapons. Our intelligence said humans have limited military resources. They did not mention that humans apparently consider everything a potential weapon." Then space ripped open, and the UES Indomitable arrived. Minho did not waste time with communications. He immediately launched the momentum bombs, strange devices that did not explode but instead released waves of gravity that sent smaller Dracorian ships spinning out of control. Then Dr. Jiho activated the Chaos Protocol. Suddenly, every Dracorian ship started receiving hundreds of messages. Orders to retreat. Orders to advance. Distress calls from ships that were not damaged. And most confusing of all, personal messages from Dracorian families back home, somehow intercepted and rebroadcast at maximum volume. The Dracorian fleet fell into disarray. Ships were not sure which orders were real. Commanders were arguing with each other over open channels. The careful battle formation broke apart. Minho pressed the advantage, executing maneuvers that made his crew nervous. He flew close to the planet's atmosphere, using it to help turn faster than should be possible. He deliberately put his ship between 2 Dracorian vessels, forcing them to hold their fire or risk hitting each other. It was not a fair fight. It was not an honorable fight. It was human fight using every dirty trick, every creative solution, every bit of insanity that centuries of warfare had taught them. After 2 hours of chaos, Commander Vrek made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He ordered a retreat. Not because his fleet was defeated. They still outnumbered the humans significantly. But because he had no idea what these crazy creatures would do next, and he needed to regroup. As the Dracorian ships jumped away, Yuna allowed herself to breathe. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Across the galaxy, the recording of the battle spread. The Council watched in fascination. The other species watched in confusion, and in his private chamber, Elder Rathkar watched with deep sadness. "I tried to warn them," he whispered to himself. "Now they will learn the hard way." The retreat from New Horizon was supposed to be temporary. Commander Vrek had returned to the Dracorian High Command expecting praise for his caution. Instead, he faced humiliation. High Overlord Krem stood before the assembled military leaders, his scales dark with rage. Behind him, the recording of the battle played on loop. Dracorian ships spinning out of control, communications filled with chaos, and worst of all, humans using mining equipment and garbage as weapons. "This is unacceptable," Krem said, his voice cold. "We have become a joke. The other Council species are laughing at us. The humans are broadcasting their victory across the galaxy. They are calling it the Battle of New Horizon, as if 20 ships against a colony is some great achievement." He turned to face his commanders. "No more games. No more testing. We will crush humanity completely. Mobilize the 2nd, 4th, and 7th fleets. We will attack 5 human colonies simultaneously. Let us see them defend against 200 ships." The orders went out within hours. Across Dracorian space, massive fleets began to move. This time there would be no warnings, no chances to surrender. Just overwhelming force. On Earth, Ambassador Hana stood before the United Earth Council. The room was filled with tension. Everyone had seen the intelligence reports. Everyone knew what was coming. "The Galactic Council is debating what to do," Hana reported. "But their debates take weeks. The Dracorian fleets will reach our colonies in 3 days. We are alone." Admiral Huan Song stood up. He was old, with gray hair and scars from the solar wars decades ago. "Then we fight alone. I have been preparing for this since we joined the Council. Every colony has been fortified. Every ship has been armed."
"And I have some surprises ready. Can we win?"
someone asked. Huan's smile was grim. "No, not in a fair fight." But who said anything about fighting fair? The attacks came as predicted. The Dracorian fleets jumped into 5 human systems simultaneously. Kepler Station, New Beijing, Aurora Colony, Titan's Rest, and Freedom Point. Each colony had between 5 and 15,000 inhabitants. Each faced a fleet of 40 or more warships. At Kepler Station, Engineer Nari had spent the last month turning the entire colony into a weapon. The life support systems had been modified to generate massive electromagnetic pulses. The water recyclers had been converted into mass accelerators. Even the communication array had been weaponized to emit directed energy beams. When the Dracorian fleet arrived, they expected to see a helpless colony. Instead, the entire station lit up like a Christmas tree. Energy beams lanced out from unexpected directions. Missiles launched from disguised civilian ships. And the whole time Nari was on the open channel cheerfully explaining what she had done. "The coffee maker on Deck 7 now shoots plasma," she said happily. "The bathroom fixtures have been converted into kinetic weapons. And do not even ask what I did with the agricultural domes. You really do not want to know." The Dracorian commander was furious. "This is insane. These are not military installations. How are you doing this?" Nari's laugh came through the speakers. "Humans have been at war for thousands of years. We learned a long time ago that anything can be a weapon if you are creative enough." At New Beijing, the situation was different. The colonists had evacuated the civilians and turned the entire colony into a trap. Buildings were rigged with explosives. The ground was seeded with mines. And in the central plaza, a massive bomb had been placed directly above a geological fault line. When the Dracorian ground forces landed, they found a message written in letters 50 meters tall. "This planet is rigged to explode. You have 1 hour to leave. We are not bluffing." The Dracorian commander thought it was a bluff. He sent his troops to secure the bomb. They found that it was real. More than real. It was insane. The humans had placed enough explosives to crack the planet's crust. They were willing to destroy their own world rather than let it be taken. The Dracorians withdrew. It was not worth it. At Aurora Colony, Commander Sora Choi and her Raptor squadron were demonstrating why human pilots were different from everyone else. The Council races flew with precision and discipline. Humans flew like they were insane. Lieutenant Taeho Kang was particularly impressive. He flew his fighter through a debris field at speeds that should have killed him, using chunks of destroyed satellites as weapons by shooting them toward enemy ships. When his missiles ran out, he used his fighter's exhaust as a flamethrower. When his guns overheated, he rammed an enemy drone and used the explosion to change direction. "Is he insane?" the Dracorian wing commander asked, watching Taeho's impossible maneuvers. "No," one of his pilots said quietly. "He is human. They do not fear death the same way we do. They fear losing more." But the worst battle was at Titan's Rest. Admiral Huan had taken the entire Earth defense fleet and positioned them in the Nebula of Storms, a region of space filled with radiation and gravitic anomalies. It was considered impassable by most species. Huan used it as a fortress. The Dracorian fleet had no choice but to go through the nebula if they wanted to reach Earth. Huan made them pay for every light year. He positioned his ships in the most dangerous areas, using the natural hazards as weapons. When Dracorian ships tried to avoid the radiation storms, they flew into ambush zones. When they tried to use their superior sensors, the nebula blinded them. For 3 weeks, the battle raged. The Dracorians kept sending more ships, sure that sheer numbers would win. Huan kept finding new ways to make them suffer. He used gravity wells to slingshot damaged ships into enemy formations. He detonated reactors to create temporary black holes. He even sent automated freighters loaded with nuclear waste on collision courses. The casualties were horrific. Humanity lost 80% of its fleet, but the Dracorians lost 40% of their attacking force. And more importantly, they had to stop. They needed to regroup, to resupply, to figure out what to do about these insane creatures who refused to die. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council finally convened an emergency session. The recordings of the battles played on the central screens. Every species watched in stunned silence. Elder Rathkar stood again. His voice was sad, filled with the weight of being right. "I warned you. Humans do not fight like we do. They do not have honor codes or rules of engagement written into their biology. They learned warfare from each other, and they have been perfecting it for 10,000 years. He brought up a display showing human history. Look at their wars. They have fought with swords, with arrows, with guns, with bombs, with chemicals, with diseases. They have fought in deserts, in jungles, in frozen wastes, in cities, in space. They have fought each other so many times that they have words for different types of surrender in over 200 languages. He paused, letting that sink in. But here is what you must understand. They also have over 300 words for refusing to give up. They have concepts like spite, stubbornness, determination, grit, perseverance, and tenacity. Each word means something slightly different, but they all mean the same thing. Humans do not stop. A council member from the peaceful Velmorian species spoke up. But they are losing. The Dracorians still have superior numbers. Why do they not surrender and negotiate? Rathkar looked at her with ancient eyes. Because surrender is not in their nature when their homes are threatened. You want to know what humans are really like? Let me tell you a story from their history. There was once a city called Stalingrad. One army surrounded it completely. They had more soldiers, more tanks, more supplies. The defenders should have surrendered. Instead, they fought for every building, every street, every room. They fought in sewers and basements. They fought with guns, with knives, with rocks, with their bare hands, and they won. He brought up more images. That is not an isolated case. Humans have done this hundreds of times throughout their history. They lose battles and keep fighting. They lose wars and rebuild. They face extinction and adapt. And every time they learn, they improve. They become more dangerous. The council chamber was silent. Finally, the council leader spoke. What do you suggest we do? Intervene, Rathkar said firmly. Send our fleets to enforce the ceasefire. Force both sides to negotiate. Because if we do not, one of two things will happen. Either the Dracorians will destroy humanity, which would be a terrible loss to the galaxy, or humanity will find a way to win, and that will be even more terrifying. More terrifying than what we have seen? Someone asked. Rathkar nodded slowly. Everything you have seen so far is humans fighting with restraint. They are following their own laws of war. They are trying to minimize civilian casualties. They are holding back their worst weapons because they know the galaxy is watching. But if you push them too far, if you threaten their homeworld, if you force them to choose between extinction and atrocity, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Every species in the council had seen humanity's history. They knew what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. The vote was called. For the first time in a century, the Galactic Council agreed to military intervention. But the fleets would take weeks to arrive, and in that time, the war would reach its terrible conclusion. The Dracorian Empire was not used to setbacks. For 200 years, they had expanded across the galaxy, conquering or absorbing dozens of species. They always won. It was simply a matter of time and overwhelming force. Humanity was supposed to be no different. But 6 weeks after the initial attacks, High Overlord Krem stood in his command center, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces had lost 40% of their attacking fleets. Not destroyed, but damaged, demoralized, and confused. The humans had lost more, but they were still fighting, still adapting, still finding new ways to cause problems. How? He demanded. How are they doing this? We have better ships, better weapons, better training. By every measure, we should have won already. His chief strategist, an old warrior named Throck, spoke carefully. They are not fighting the way we expect. They ignore our battle formations. They use civilian equipment as weapons. They attack when they should defend. They retreat when they should attack. There is no pattern, no logic we can predict. Then we change our approach, Krem said. No more small fleets. No more testing. We take everything we have and we crush their homeworld. Once Earth falls, the colonies will surrender. On Earth, in a secret laboratory buried deep beneath the surface, Dr. Jiho Nam was working on something that made even him nervous. Around him, screens displayed data on Dracorian biology, psychology, and culture. He had been studying the enemy for weeks, looking for weaknesses that were not physical. How is the project going? A voice asked. It was scientist Mira O, another brilliant mind who had been recruited for this special task. Jiho looked up, his eyes tired. It is ready, but I am not sure we should use it. This goes beyond just fighting. This is psychological warfare on a scale we have never attempted before. Mira sat down next to him. Explain it to me again. The Dracorians are warriors, Jiho said. They value strength, honor, and direct combat. Their entire culture is built around the idea that they are apex predators. But I have found something interesting in their history. 1,000 years ago, they fought a civil war. It was brutal, filled with tactics they now consider dishonorable. They buried that history because it embarrassed them. He brought up files on his screen. I have also been studying human psychological operations from our own history. The things we did to break enemy morale without firing a shot, and I have combined them. What I have created is a weapon that targets their minds, not their bodies. Mira looked at the files. This is disturbing. Yes, Jiho agreed. But we are losing. Earth will be under siege in days. If we do not do something drastic, humanity ends. I would rather be disturbing than extinct. The approval came from the highest levels. Operation Mindhammer was authorized. It was not a proud moment in human history, but it was a necessary one. The first phase began with simple harassment. Human ships would jump into Dracorian systems not to fight, but to broadcast messages. Some were in ancient Dracorian dialects that had not been spoken in centuries. Others used light patterns and sound frequencies that triggered instinctive fear responses in their biology. A few played recordings of their own civil war, the shameful past they tried to forget. It was psychological terrorism, and it worked. Dracorian soldiers started reporting nightmares. Their officers became paranoid, seeing human tricks everywhere. The proud warrior culture began to show cracks. The second phase was more direct. Dr. Jiho had created AI drones that looked like Dracorian ships but moved in impossible ways. They would appear in the middle of battles, broadcasting distress calls, then vanish. They would mimic the signatures of important vessels, causing friendly fire incidents. They created ghost ships that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Captain Minho integrated these tactics into his fleet operations. The UES Indomitable and its sister ships became phantom threats. They would strike without warning, using the psychological weapons to cause chaos, then disappear before the enemy could respond. It was not honorable. It was not fair. But it was effective. On the front lines, Colonel Yuna had been promoted to general and given command of all colonial defense forces. She coordinated with Admiral Huan to execute a strategy they called the Hydra Protocol. Every time the Dracorians destroyed one human position, 2 more would appear elsewhere. It was exhausting for humanity, but it was also exhausting for the enemy. Meanwhile, Engineer Nari had taken her philosophy of weaponizing everything to new extremes. She had figured out how to turn asteroid mining lasers into long-range weapons. She had converted cargo containers into missile platforms. She had even weaponized the debris from destroyed ships using magnetic fields to launch the wreckage at high speed. "You humans are insane," a captured Dracorian officer said during interrogation. "You turn everything into weapons. Your coffee makers shoot plasma. Your mining equipment becomes missiles. Your entertainment systems hack our communications. What is wrong with you?" The interrogator, a young human soldier, shrugged. "We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We learned that in war everything is a potential weapon. The difference between us and you is that you were taught war by conquering weaker species. We were taught war by fighting equals who were just as creative and desperate as we were." The Dracorian fleet finally reached Earth's solar system. It was massive, over 300 ships. They had brought everything they had left. This was the final push. High Overlord Krem commanded the fleet personally, determined to end this war. As they approached Earth, they found the solar system transformed into a maze of death. The asteroid belt had been turned into a minefield. Every planet and moon had weapons platforms. Thousands of automated drones filled the space between worlds, ready to swarm any threat. And then scientist Mira O activated her masterpiece, the human element. Every Dracorian ship suddenly found their communication systems hijacked. Instead of tactical data, they received something else. History lessons. Thousands of years of human warfare flooded into Dracorian minds. The Trojan War, the Mongol conquest, the World Wars, Korea, Vietnam, every conflict, every strategy, every innovation in the art of killing. But it was not just battles. It was the psychology behind them, the propaganda, the deception, the way humans convinced themselves that terrible things were necessary. The Dracorians watched recordings of human soldiers explaining their tactics. They saw interviews with generals discussing strategies. They read field manuals on psychological operations, guerrilla warfare, and asymmetric combat. They learned about concepts like mutually assured destruction, scorched earth policies, and total war. Most disturbing of all, they saw footage of humans fighting each other. Not aliens, not monsters, but other humans. And the creativity, the brutality, the sheer determination on display made it clear. These creatures had been practicing for this moment for their entire existence. On the Dracorian flagship, High Overlord Krem watched the flood of information with growing horror. He saw a human documentary about the Battle of Stalingrad, where 2 armies fought over a single city for months. reducing it to rubble but never giving up. He saw recordings of nuclear weapon tests, demonstrations of biological warfare, and discussions of chemical agents. But what truly broke him was a simple message that appeared on every screen, in every Dracorian ship. This is what humans do to each other when we disagree. Imagine what we will do to you. The psychological impact was catastrophic. Dracorian soldiers began to question their orders. Officers argued about whether the victory was worth the cost. The proud warrior culture that had sustained their empire for centuries began to crack under the weight of a simple truth. They were not fighting a primitive species. They were fighting survivors of the most brutal training ground in the galaxy, a planet where every creature was trying to kill them, including themselves. Admiral Juan watched the Dracorian fleet's cohesion fall apart from his command center. The enemy ships were still there, still dangerous, but they were hesitating, second-guessing, afraid. "It is working," he said quietly. "They finally understand what they are fighting." Ambassador Hana, who had been coordinating diplomatic efforts while the military fought, received a message. It was from the Galactic Council. Their intervention fleets had finally arrived at the edge of human space. They were demanding an immediate ceasefire, but Hana knew it was too late for that. The Dracorians were here. Earth was under threat, and humanity had already made a decision about what to do next. She sent a message back to the Council. "Tell your fleets to stand by. This war is about to end, but not because you are intervening. It is going to end because we are going to show the Dracorians why you should have listened to Elder Rathkar's warning." The Dracorian fleet surrounded Earth like a noose tightening around a neck. 300 ships, the largest force they had ever assembled. High Overlord Krem stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the blue planet below. Despite the psychological warfare, despite the casualties, despite everything, he had humanity trapped. "Send the message," he ordered. The communication went out on all frequencies. Krem's face appeared on every screen across Earth. "Humans, your resistance has been impressive. You have fought well, but it ends now. You have 1 hour to surrender. Unconditional, total. If you refuse, we will reduce your planet to ash. There will be no mercy, no negotiation. Choose." In the United Earth Council chambers, the leaders of humanity gathered. Some wanted to surrender. The casualties had been horrific. 3 billion dead across all colonies. Earth itself had lost millions. How many more had to die? But Ambassador Hana stood before them with fire in her eyes. "If we surrender now, everything we have fought for means nothing. Every person who died, died for nothing. The galaxy will remember us as the species that gave up when it mattered most." "What choice do we have?" someone asked desperately. "They have 300 ships. We have maybe 30 left. It is over." Admiral Juan spoke up, his voice calm. "It is not over. We have one more option. Operation Ragnarok." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about Ragnarok. It was the contingency plan, the last resort. The option that was so insane that even humans had hesitated to approve it. It had been proposed by Captain Minho 6 months ago, and had sat in classified files ever since. "Explain it," the council leader said. Juan brought up a star map. "While the Dracorians have been attacking us, we have been preparing. We identified their homeworld, their shipyards, their supply depots, everything that matters to their empire. Ragnarok is simple. We strike directly at the Dracorian homeworld while their fleet is here." "That is 400 light-years away," someone protested. "We do not have ships there. We do not have the forces to attack their home system." "Actually," a new voice said, "we do." Commander Doyun Bey walked into the chamber. He was young, brilliant, and had been running the most secret project in human history. Behind him came Captain Minho and several other officers who were supposed to be dead. "The Ghost Fleet," Doyun said simply. "We have been building it since the day we joined the Galactic Council. 30 ships constructed in secret, using every piece of alien technology we could steal, buy, or reverse engineer. They have been in Dracorian space for the last month, waiting for this moment." The council stared in shock. "You have had ships in enemy territory this whole time?" Minho nodded. "The Dracorians think in terms of direct confrontation. They never considered that we would sneak a fleet past them. But humans have been using stealth and deception in warfare for thousands of years. It is what we do." Hana understood immediately. "You are not trying to conquer their homeworld. You are sending a message." "Exactly," Doyun said. "We cannot win a war of attrition. But we can prove that nowhere is safe. We can show them that if they destroy Earth, we will destroy everything they care about. Mutually assured destruction. The vote was called. It was close, but Operation Ragnarok was approved. Humanity's response to the Dracorian ultimatum was written by Ambassador Hana herself. She kept it simple. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast across the entire galaxy so everyone would hear. Hana's face appeared, looking directly at High Overlord Krem. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of," she said, her voice cold and clear. "You dismissed our warnings. You laughed at our defenses. You thought we were primitive and weak. Now you are about to find out what happens when you threaten our home. We offered you peace. You chose war. You forced us to show you what we really are. Remember this moment. Remember that you asked for this." She paused, then added the words that would echo through history. "Your move, Overlord. But know this. If Earth burns, your homeworld burns first." 400 light-years away in the heart of the Dracorian Empire, the Ghost Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Commander Doyen stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the massive shipyards orbiting the Dracorian homeworld. "Execute the plan," he ordered. The attack was surgical and devastating. The Ghost Fleet did not target civilian areas. They were not trying to kill innocents. They were targeting military installations, shipyards, supply depots, and communication arrays. But they did it with a precision and creativity that showcased everything humanity had learned. Dr. Jiho's psychological weapons were deployed at full power. The Dracorian homeworld's communication networks were flooded with messages showing what humans had done to their own cities in past wars. Images of Dresden, of Hiroshima, of Carthage sown with salt. A message written in fire, "This could be you." But they did not destroy cities. They destroyed capability. Every shipyard that could build warships was reduced to debris. Every military academy that trained their officers was hit with electromagnetic pulses that erased all their data. Every orbital defense platform was disabled or destroyed. And on one of the Dracorian moons, visible from the entire planet, human ships used precision lasers to carve a message into the surface. Letters 50 kilometers tall that would be visible for centuries. Your move. The psychological impact was immediate and catastrophic. The Dracorian people, who had believed their military was invincible, watched in horror as their homeworld was attacked. The warriors who thought they were apex predators realized they were now prey. The empire that had conquered dozens of species faced the reality that a species they had dismissed as primitive had reached into their heart and squeezed. On Earth, High Overlord Krem received the reports with disbelief, then anger, then finally fear. His homeworld was under attack. His shipyards were burning. His people were terrified, and he was 400 light-years away, unable to defend them. "How?" he demanded. "How did they get ships there? How did we not detect them?" His tactical officer looked at him with something close to pity. "Sir, they have been planning this since before the war started. While we were focused on attacking their colonies, they were infiltrating our space. They sacrificed billions of their own people to keep us distracted, while they positioned forces in our rear. This is not a battle. This is a chess game, and they have been thinking 5 moves ahead." Krem felt something he had not experienced in decades. Doubt. Not about victory in a battle, but about the entire war. Even if he destroyed Earth, humanity had proven they could strike back. They could reach his homeworld. They could threaten everything he cared about. This was not conquest. This was extermination. And he was no longer sure which species would be exterminated. The communication came from his own government, from the Council of Elders who ruled the Dracorian Empire. Their message was short and devastating. Recall the fleet. Negotiate. End this war. Krem wanted to refuse. Pride demanded he finish what he had started. But wisdom, late in coming, told him that continuing would destroy his empire. The humans had proven they were willing to sacrifice everything. Could he say the same? As the Dracorian fleet began to withdraw from Earth's orbit, the Galactic Council's intervention forces finally arrived. They found a war that had already ended. Not through their mediation, not through superior force, but through a demonstration of what happens when you push humanity too far. Elder Rathkar stood on Nexus Prime, watching the recordings of the Ghost Fleet's attack. Around him, the other Council species watched in stunned silence. The precision, the strategy, the psychological warfare, the sheer audacity of sneaking a fleet 400 light-years into enemy territory, and holding it there for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I tried to warn them, he said quietly. I told them humans were dangerous, but even I did not fully understand. This was not about winning a war. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Do not threaten our home. A council member spoke, her voice shaking. They held back. Even now, attacking the Dracorian homeworld, they minimized casualties. They could have killed billions, but they chose to destroy only military targets. Why? Rathgar looked at her with his ancient eyes. Because they are not monsters. They are survivors. They know the difference between necessary violence and cruelty. They have rules, laws, ethics that they follow even in war. That is what makes them truly terrifying. They can be this effective while holding back their worst capabilities. He brought up files he had kept secret until now. I have seen their classified archives. I know what weapons they developed but chose not to use. Biological agents that could sterilize planets. Nanomachines that could disassemble matter at the molecular level. Artificial intelligence weapons that could think faster than any organic mind. They have all of these things and more, but they keep them locked away because they understand the danger. The council chamber was silent. Every species was calculating what this meant for the galactic balance of power. Humanity had proven they were not primitive. They were not weak. They were patient, strategic, and creative in ways that the galaxy had never encountered before. On Earth, as the Dracorian fleet retreated and the immediate threat passed, people emerged from shelters. They looked up at the sky, seeing their home still intact. They had survived,